What if I told you the biggest scandal in NBA history isn't about a player at all, but about a billionaire owner secretly pulling strings behind the scenes? Because right now, new evidence suggests the Clippers didn't just bend the rules for Kawhi Leonard, they shattered them. We're talking about hidden payments, shady business partners, and demands so outrageous they could have changed the NBA forever. And yet somehow, the league seems ready to look the other way. So how did it all come crashing down? And is this the beginning of the end for Steve Ballmer's Clippers dynasty? Let's break it all down. It began with a single payment that looked like nothing more than an endorsement deal. But when Pablo Torre reported that eco-finance company Aspiration had paid Kawhi Leonard a jaw-dropping $28 million in cash and $20 million in stock, eyebrows shot up around the league. Here's the kicker. This job came with no responsibilities, no commercials, no appearances, no social media posts, nothing. Just straight cash for existing. And the timing? Days after Steve Ballmer himself invested $50 million into the same company. On the surface, Ballmer tried to play dumb. He claimed Aspiration defrauded him, that he had no clue what Kawhi's side deal looked like. But when you zoom in, this was no coincidence. It looked like a deliberate attempt to sneak millions around the NBA's salary cap. And if you think that was suspicious, the next twist makes it impossible to believe Ballmer was innocent. But the deeper you dig, the more obvious it becomes that this wasn't just random luck for Kawhi. Enter Dennis Wong. Most casual fans have never heard his name, but Wong is Ballmer's closest friend since the 1970s and the only minority owner of the Clippers. While Ballmer holds 99%, Wong owns the other 1%. And he's always been by Ballmer's side. So what happened when Aspiration started falling apart in 2022? Unable to make payments to Kawhi, Wong conveniently stepped in with a $2 million investment, almost identical to the $1.75 million Kawhi's camp had been demanding. Think about that timing. The company was late on its obligations, Kawhi's uncle Dennis was furious, and suddenly Wong, who had every reason to know Aspiration was a sinking ship, dumps millions into the business. Why? Because within days, Kawhi finally gets his missing payment. And here's another layer. Wong's daughter actually worked at Aspiration. She knew the company was spiraling. She knew it made no sense to invest. So why throw away millions? Unless, of course, it wasn't about Aspiration at all. It was about keeping Kawhi happy. At this point, it's hard to argue Ballmer's "I didn't know" defense. Because Wong doesn't move without Ballmer. And if that sounds suspicious, wait until you see the demands Kawhi's camp made years earlier in Toronto. Back in 2019, Kawhi Leonard was fresh off delivering Toronto its first NBA championship. He was a free agent, and the Raptors wanted him back at any cost. But Uncle Dennis had other ideas. Reports say Kawhi's camp made a list of demands so outrageous the Raptors couldn't possibly say yes. First, trade for Paul George. Second, give Kawhi an ownership stake in the Toronto Maple Leafs. Third, guarantee at least $10 million in outside sponsorship money. The Raptors tried. They lined up sponsors ready to pay Kawhi big money. But when those companies asked about commercials or appearances, Uncle Dennis shut it down. Kawhi wanted the cash without lifting a finger. Toronto refused. It was too obvious, too risky. And Kawhi left. But fast forward, and what did the Clippers provide? Paul George, check. Outside money for doing nothing, check. A deal so cleanly aligned with Uncle Dennis's original demands that it looked like the blueprint had been copied and pasted. And while Toronto walked away, the Clippers were all in. Which makes you wonder, was this really Kawhi's first rodeo with side deals? Or has Steve Ballmer been running this playbook for years? For anyone who thinks Ballmer couldn't possibly be this reckless, history tells a different story. Take the infamous DeAndre Jordan case. Reports surfaced that Ballmer once tried to slip Jordan $200,000 on the side, outside of his official contract. It didn't blow up into a full scandal, but it showed Ballmer's willingness to push boundaries. And then there's the wild story from his kid's high school. Before Ballmer owned the Clippers, he was obsessed with the Lakeside High School basketball team. A program so bad they won just 2 games in a season. Ballmer reportedly shouted after a loss, "Screw this, I'll start a foundation and bring in new players." What followed? Allegations of under-the-table payments to coaches, recruitment perks for players, and even one recruit living in a $6 million mansion. Soon, Lakeside went from losers to district champs. Sound familiar? That's the exact same mentality Ballmer carried into the NBA. If money can solve it, throw money at it. But here's the thing. The NBA has punished teams for way less than this, which is why what happens next is so bizarre. The NBA isn't new to scandals like this. Back in 2000, the Minnesota Timberwolves lost draft picks and had Joe Smith's contract voided for an under-the-table agreement. And the collective bargaining agreement is crystal clear. Violations don't need direct evidence. Even circumstantial proof is enough to punish a team. If a deal cannot rationally be explained, that's a violation. So let me ask, what rational explanation is there for a company paying Kawhi Leonard $7 million a year to do absolutely nothing? There isn't one. And by the letter of the law, the Clippers should already be cooked. So why hasn't the hammer come down? Because Adam Silver himself had something to say. And it left everyone stunned. When asked about the scandal, Silver dodged harder than a politician under investigation. He rambled about totality of evidence and fairness, before essentially admitting he wouldn't act unless there was undeniable proof. Translation? Circumstantial evidence, the exact kind the CBA allows punishment for, wasn't enough for him. This was shocking. It meant no matter how much reporting came out, no matter how many shady connections were revealed, Silver wasn't ready to touch Steve Ballmer. Why? Maybe because Ballmer isn't just any owner. He's one of the richest men on earth, a tech billionaire with enormous influence. And if the league isn't willing to punish one of its most powerful owners, then the entire salary cap system starts to look like a joke. So what does this mean for the Clippers moving forward? Right now, Steve Ballmer is acting like nothing happened. He went on ESPN and flatly declared the Clippers innocent. No mistakes, no shady business, nothing to see here. But think about what he didn't say. He didn't acknowledge the obvious irregularities. He didn't admit something shady happened on someone's watch. Instead, he denied everything, because he knows Adam Silver and the NBA's billionaire club will protect him. For the Clippers, this means no lost draft picks, no voided contracts, no massive suspensions. But reputations don't disappear so easily. Fans now see Kawhi's contract as tainted, and Ballmer's empire looks more like a house of cards built on loopholes and hidden payments. The irony? The harder Ballmer insists on his innocence, the guiltier the whole situation looks. But while some players chase every dollar, others have made the exact opposite choice. And the contrast couldn't be more striking. While Kawhi Leonard's scandal is about money flowing under the table, one former player made headlines for walking away from millions. Larry Sanders shocked the NBA when he gave back money and stepped away from the game. At the time, people thought he was crazy. Why give up guaranteed millions? Why abandon a rising star like Giannis Antetokounmpo as your teammate? But years later, we learned Sanders was prioritizing his mental health, his family, and his future outside basketball. He didn't want the money if it meant sacrificing his well-being, and maybe that's the biggest contrast of all. On one side, a superstar and billionaire owner caught in an elaborate scheme for more cash and power. On the other, a player who showed that money isn't everything. So the question is, what's the real legacy here? The hidden deals that stain a franchise's reputation? Or the rare players who prove the game is about more than just dollars?